Before you get the wrong idea, Six Sigma isn't all about statistics and graphs. There are also a few words. In this lecture, we'll look at the business side of Six Sigma. While it's well and good to define and improve processes, it's essential to make sure there are customers to satisfy. There are no guarantees that you can meet all stakeholders' expectations. But to the extent that you use the material in today's lesson, you'll increase your chances. We'll start off by discussing strategic planning, a concept that looks at internal strengths and weaknesses and external opportunities and threats. We'll move on to two methods of identifying customer requirements, the voice of the customer and quality function deployment. Next, we'll explore benchmarking, a technique that helps you determine how your company matches up to the competition and industry standards. Finally, we'll look at a few financial methods to help you keep track of key objectives. Let's continue. Companies that endure over time typically use strategic planning. They review market conditions, customer needs, competitor strengths and weaknesses, social, legal, political, and economic conditions, levels of technology, and internal resources. They create a strategic plan that takes information from the environment, develops a mission statement and objectives, and then forms action plans. Coming up with a strategic plan is tough because of all the variables that you need to manage. A firm may produce an internal strategic plan after putting forth a great deal of effort only to never update it. Since the variables influencing your strategic plan change, your plan must become a living, dynamic document. For any firm, the starting point must be defining who your customers are. Start your initial strategic planning process with a few questions. For companies to succeed, they need to clearly and completely answer them. First, who are our current customers? You can't guess at the answer. You need to identify your current customers by using data. Next, what value do we give our customers? This question is very powerful. The best way to define it is to understand the total experience customers have with your products and services and with your company. Then we have who will be our future customers. In our fast-paced world, someone who is a customer for a product today may want something different in the future. Also, you may acquire new customers that don't buy today. Then we have what business are we in? This question may seem obvious, but many firms overlook it. Remember, the customer defines your business. The classic example is the railroads. Railroads believed that their business was powerful locomotive engines pulling flatbed, box, and passenger cars along steel rails. But customers defined railroads as transportation. Because of the railroad management's narrow viewpoint, they missed out on other transportation opportunities, such as using planes and trucks to haul cargo and transport passengers. An important part of strategic planning is an environmental analysis. Let's examine the different elements. The role that your organization plays with environment elements is vital. You need to play an influential, not a reactive role. Also, you must identify critical success factors, which determines how you can be a dominant force in the market that you participate in. You discover critical success factors when you analyze your environment. A popular tool you can use for this analysis is SWOT, S-W-O-T. It stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Rather than use a huge number of words to describe environmental analysis, SWOT has become an industry convention. The S and W applies to your internal elements and the O and the T to your external elements. Let's take a few moments and learn about SWOT. We'll start with the external elements. The first one is technology. Technology continues to grow by leaps and bounds. Changes in technology create new industries and make others obsolete. The emergence of cell telephones and the decline of other communication methods is an example. From a strategic planning perspective, you need to determine how technology will affect the form of your products, how it will influence materials you buy, how it will change your processes, and how it will provide avenues to new opportunities. Of all the external elements, technology is the most critical. If you underestimate its impact, you'll pay a high price as you try to play catch up. Technology follows a pattern, starting with invention, something brand new, moving to innovation, commercializing an invention, and ending with diffusion, customer acceptance. The next one is social and cultural elements. As compared to technology, social and cultural elements are easier to predict. They are evolutionary, changing gradually, as opposed to revolutionary, happening all of a sudden. Changes in the family unit is an example. So is population shifts in geographic areas. The main issues to manage social and cultural elements are to identify the existence of the various cultural and social forces, identify how these forces interact, and project their degree of influence. You need to be aware that social and cultural forces play a significant role on legal and political elements. Then we have economics. A study of macroeconomics is a good place to start. Key areas to look at are gross domestic product, GDP, levels of industrial production, employment levels, and personal income. These areas affect microeconomics, which tend to be more meaningful for businesses. Microeconomics includes supply and demand, setting prices, the use of labor and money, and for firms with international operations, exports and imports, as well as degrees of protectionism. Next are legal and political elements. The role of government in business has always been a hot topic. In addition to knowing about laws that affect your company, you also need to understand how officials interpret laws. Economic and cultural conditions play a role in this area. It's not uncommon to see laws passed or decisions made because of an issue taking place in the economy or in society. To successfully manage the impact of your legal and political environment, you need to appeal to and influence consumers and officials. These individuals can become effective lobbyists. You also need to know the relevant laws and how they are applied. The final external element is competition. The primary areas to consider are the number and size of competition and also the ways firms compete in terms of price, product, place, and promotion. Let's shift gears now and review internal environmental elements. It's one thing to identify prospects and threats in the external environment, but another thing to be prepared to seize opportunities and protect against threats. Companies that have a competitive advantage maintain efficiency and excellence in customer service, market products that are well designed and perform as expected, display leadership in product innovations, move products efficiently, maintain product availability and selection, and provide value for the money. Let's explore a few ways to assess if organizations have the right stuff. First, you want to look at attribute measurements. Use this approach to see if a desired feature is present. For example, if a company emphasizes high quality, all employees should know what represents quality. Next are effectiveness measurements. Let's continue on with a quality example. Employees may know what represents quality, but do they pass on known defects? If so, this is a low effectiveness measurement. Then we have efficiency measurements. In addition to meeting objectives, it's important to meet them with minimal effort and cost. When employees evaluate quality, can they do it easily? Apply these measurements to top management, product lines, research and development, marketing, operations, information technology, financial management, organizational structure, and company culture and values. Now that you have a good handle on strategic planning, let's dive in and explore two methods that captures and satisfies customer demand. The voice of the customer, VOC, contrary to what some people may think, is not about an irate customer complaining. The voice of the customer describes customers' needs, wants, and priorities that must be met to stay in business. It isn't easy to listen to and understand the VOC. Customers' voices are different. You have diverse voices in consumer, industrial, and government markets. Voices also vary by age, sex, ethnicity, and geographic location. Also, when you sell to a company, you hear the voice of a buyer, a user, and an influencer, a manager, for instance. Progressive companies want customers to drive the product or service development process. When you understand these expectations, your deliverables or outputs satisfy current customer requirements and also creates a framework to anticipate future customer needs. If you want to hear the VOC, how do you go about doing it? As we discussed, the techniques vary depending on products, services, location, expectations, and resources. But to generalize, you need to do the following. First, identify the customer base or bases. Break up potential customers into groups that are of interest to you. Next, capture the VOC. Use customer feedbacks, for example, complaints, focus groups, customer visits, and market research. Next, collect and organize data. Use progressive and efficient methods. Next is analyze data. Use objective process improvement tools. Then formulate conclusions, run 2 or 3 trials to validate your beliefs, and finally act on conclusions. Communicate knowledge and information to the right individuals in your organization, for example, marketing and product development. Traditionally, marketing has had responsibility for defining customer needs and product requirements. This tends to isolate research and development and other company personnel from the customer and from gaining a first-hand understanding of customer needs. As a result, customers' real needs can become somewhat unclear for other company personnel. Fortunately, Quality Function Deployment, QFD, provides a way to clarify the voice of the customer. When you use Quality Function Deployment, product development personnel can become directly involved in understanding customer needs. This may involve visiting or meeting with customers, observing customers using or maintaining products, or participating in focus groups. Another way to achieve this is by working directly with customers in a team setting. This direct involvement provides a better understanding of customer needs, the customer environment, and product use. The intent of QFD is to make sure that customer requirements are clear each step of the way and that an organization meets them with the desired level of quality. QFD is a tool to foolproof the product design and development process. Without QFD, a salesperson may not define what a customer truly wants. And even if he or she gets it right, the rest of the company may not completely understand what they need to do to satisfy the customer. Making a product is not an overnight event. It comes from a sequence of interrelated events. QFD's goal is to convert customer expectations into technical requirements through each stage of product or service development and production. This means that when production receives information from research and development, it is crystal clear. QFD came onto the scene in Japan in the late 1960s. Mitsubishi and Bridgestone Tire were two early pioneers. The first book in English about QFD did not come out until 1994, some 30 years later. The centerpiece of QFD, as you see in the diagram, is its famous House of Quality. It includes customer expectations, a competitive analysis, engineering plans, correlations, technical comparisons, and trade-offs. Assume that my nephew designs a new skateboard with enough stability even for the old folks. I tell him about QFD and the House of Quality, and he decides to use it to define his requirements. The what section identifies specific customer requirements such as appearance, weight, and durability. The how section identifies the technical requirements that my nephew will use to fulfill the customer's what's. The hows could include strength of the material, quality of the wheels, paint, stains, and decals. The relationship of the hows and what's are recorded in the center of the House of Quality using a rating system. For example, the combination of a customer's perception of appearance and the paint, stains, and decals would produce a rating. In the competitive evaluation section on the right side of the diagram, customers rate how well my nephew's and competitors' skateboards meet their needs. The correlation matrix at the top in the roof of the house identifies and rates the relationships between the different how variables. For example, strength of the material and quality of the wheels have a strong relationship, but strength of the material and decals have no relationship. The target value and competitive evaluation at the bottom section of the house identifies technical measurements and also a technical comparison with competitors. Once you complete the House of Quality, you can see everything that you need to know on one sheet of paper. It's been my experience that this is what management really wants. Once you understand customer needs and your capabilities, you need to find out how your organization matches up with other companies. You can do this by using benchmarking. After you find out how you rate, you need to keep score, financially that is, by using various financial methods. Benchmarking is an outstanding management technique that emerged during the latter part of the 20th century. It is a continuous process that measures a company's product, process, service, or technology against competitors or highly respected non-competing organizations. Without benchmarking, a company's strategies are blind guesses. With it, you're able to determine a standard of excellence and pursue it with intensity. Benchmarking takes you beyond a conventional competitive analysis, sometimes called reverse engineering, where you dissect a competitor's product to gather insights into its cost or technology. Benchmarking can help you assess gaps in overall market, cost, or financial performance. Its greatest strength is focusing your attention on distinctive competencies, the things that set successful organizations apart from the rest of the pack. I recommend you use the following approach to make the most of benchmarking. First, establish and quantify standards by which to measure your operation, such as on-time delivery, customer returns, and lead time reductions. Then prepare a questionnaire for use during visits to potential benchmark companies. Next, practice benchmarking with other divisions of your own company before you benchmark targeted organizations. This will help you refine your benchmarking process and give you practice. Carefully assess potential benchmark companies based on public sources of information, trade journals, professional societies, consultants, academia, suppliers, and customers of the benchmark companies. Next, visit 3 to 6, depending on time and resources, leading companies. Obtain information not only from the management of these companies, but also from lower levels of their organization. Record gaps between the benchmark company and your organization for each standard and identify the reasons for the gap. Finally, take actions to close the gap and review and update your benchmarking process periodically to improve it. It's essential that you calculate how your successful business processes are. So let's take a look at 5 popular financial methods to do this. The average rate of return method, ARR, compares your average annual net profit after income tax resulting from an investment that you make and that you calculate using an average investment. The formula for ARR is net annual savings divided by the average investment. The average investment is the initial investment divided by 2. So if we spend $5,000 for a new piece of equipment, we divide that by 2 and find out that the average investment is $2,500. If we save $1,000 our first year, then our ARR is 1,000 divided by 2,500 or 0.4 or 40%. The main benefit of ARR is its simplicity. Many firms use ARR to compare the anticipated return from a proposal with a minimum desired return. If the proposal's return is less than desired, it is rejected. If it's greater than desired, a more in-depth analysis using other sophisticated investment techniques might then be used. The major disadvantage of ARR is that it is based on net profit rather than on cash flow. Let's look at the next method, payback period. The payback period method overcomes the cash flow shortcoming of ARR. The payback method measures the initial investment with the annual cash inflows. The formula is initial investment divided by net annual cash savings. The payback method is concerned with the time periods for recovery of expenditures. If a $10,000 outlay results in $2,500 annual increased profitability, the payback period is 4 years. 10,000 divided by 2,500. The payback period method, although simple, does not really measure the merits of investments. It only measures the speed by which the investment costs might be recovered. It has a use in evaluating a number of proposals so that only those that fall within a predetermined payback period will be considered for further evaluation using other investment techniques. However, both the payback period and the ARR methods still suffer from a common fault. They both ignore the time value of cash flows or the concept that money now is worth more than the same amount of money at some time in the future. Let's keep going and examine 3 methods that can overcome this shortcoming. First is discounted cash flow, DCF. The concept of discounted cash flow can probably best be understood by looking first at an example of compound interest. What would happen to $100 invested at a 10% compound interest rate for 4 years? At the end of 4 years, the investment would be worth $146.41. Here's how it works. So year 1, as of January 1st, we have $100. But by the end of the year, we have $110, which is 100 plus the 10% interest of $10. Then at the end of year 2, we have $121, which is now a 10% interest on the $110 that we started out with. And then year 3, using the same method, we're at $133.10. And year 4, we're at $146.41. Discounting is simply the reverse of compounding interest. In other words, at a 10% interest rate, what is $146.41 4 years from now worth today? We can work out the solution manually or with a calculator, but it's much easier to use a table of discounted cash flow factors. You can find this table in the back of any accounting or finance textbook or online. These factors tell us what any amount of money at the end of 4 years from now at a certain interest or discount rate is worth today. If we find 10% in 4 years, we see that $1 in 4 years is worth only 68.3% of that amount today. We can prove this by taking the $146.41 amount at the end of year 4 that we just calculated and discounting it back to the present. $146.41 times 0.683 equals $99.99803, or rounded to $100. We know that $100 is the right answer because it is the amount we started with in the illustration of compounding interest. When you have a series of annual cash flows, simply apply the related annual discount factor for that year to the cash inflow for the same year. Let's look at the next method, net present value. You can use the DCF method with the net present value, or NPV method, to evaluate investment proposals. Let's assume that we want to buy a machine for $5,000 that will yield the following net cash flows for each of the next 5 years. At the end of year 1, you have a $500 loss. At the end of year 2, there's a $1,900 gain. At the end of year 3, there's a $1,700 gain. Year 4, there's a $1,900 gain. And year 5, there's a $2,900 gain, which is equal to the $1,900 gain plus a $1,000 amount for trade-in of the machine. If we apply the discount factors from a table and we stick with 10%, we find the present value for the future cash flows. So at the end of year 1, the $500 loss, you multiply by 0.9091, and the net discounted factor is $455 loss. Year 2, you take the $1,900 and multiply by the factor 0.8264 and arrive at $1,570. Year 3, you take the $1,700 and you multiply that by 0.7513 and come up with $1,277. Year 4, you take the $1,900, multiply it by 0.683, and you get $1,298. And then year 5, you take the $2,900 gain, multiply it by 0.6209, and get 1,801. So adding up the discounted cash flows from the 5 years, you come up with $5,491. We then compare this total discounted cash flow against the original investment of $5,000, and we see that we are $491 ahead. When you want to compare alternative investment choices, net present value is a good choice. Let's look at the last method, internal rate of return, IRR. The NPV method uses a specific discount rate to determine if proposals result in a net present value greater than 0. Those that do not are rejected. The internal rate of return, IRR, method also uses the discounted cash flow concept. However, this method determines the interest discount rate, also called the targeted rate of return, that will make the total discounted cash inflows equal to the initial investment. For example, let's say that you want to expand a retail music store and lease a building next to your store to increase sales. You perform a study and find that it will cost $200,000 to lease, renovate, and equip the building based on a 5-year lease. Based on all revenues and costs, you determine the following gross cash flows for each of the next 5 years. Year 1 would be $36,000, year 2, $40,000, year 3, $44,000, year 4, $50,000, and year 5, $60,000, for a total of $230,000. In addition to the total of $230,000 cash flows over the next 5 years, you also estimate that you can sell equipment and fixtures for $20,000 at the end of the 5-year lease period. Your total cash recovery is therefore $230,000 plus $20,000 for a total of $250,000, which is $50,000 more that you earned than your investment of $200,000. Initially, this looks favorable, but if you discount the annual cash flows over 5 years back to their net present value, you get a different picture. Suppose you require a 12% rate of return on your money because a business associate guarantees this rate if you invest your money with her. Using 12% as a discount rate and the factors from the table that we've been using, but this time at 12%, let's look at your discounted cash flows. So year one, the $36,000 is multiplied by 0.8929 for a total of $32,144. Year two, $40,000 times 0.7972 is $31,888. Year three, 44,000 times 0.7118 for a total of $31,319. Year four, $50,000 times 0.6355 is $31,775. Year five, the revenue is $60,000 times 0.5674 for a total of $34,044. And then for year five, the trade-in, $20,000 times 0.5674 gives you $11,348. So if you add up those total discounted values, you find out we come up with $172,518. So you can see that this amount is less than the $200,000 that you initially invest. This means that you won't realize a 12% annual compounded gain, so you decide against expanding your store. This brings us to a close for today's lecture. I hope you enjoyed it and took really good notes. Take care.